How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys are doing well, man. If you couldn't tell, the last couple of videos were actually recorded in advance, and I'm happy that I was able to do that PSP video. I was waiting so long to do that. But we're going to be talking about another Android phone today, and this one is one that actually got in a little bit of drama recently, and it has more so to do with the software side of things rather than the hardware. That specific phone is the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, and this phone came out in 2017 in August, and it's actually not that bad of a phone, it's all around, it was actually the first time that we saw Samsung kind of push the thickness or at least the bezels off to the side on the Note devices. We kind of saw this a little bit on the Note 5, and the Note 7 obviously was kind of pushing the boundaries too a little bit with the bezels, and I'm actually so mad that we never really got the Note 7 as the device that we should have gotten, basically because of the explosions that were happening with it. But the Note 8 was the successor to that one, and this one was kind of controversial when it was released. People didn't know if it was going to explode or not, but now obviously we know it doesn't. But looking at this thing, you would have probably not assumed that it's going to be turning 3 years old this year, and it's weird to think that these phones are getting these many years behind. I mean, just last year the S7 was the same age, or even like the Note 5, I guess, of the year or two before were like the phones before this one. And it's just crazy to think how crazy slim the bezels are getting. If we look at something like the Note 10, obviously that one does look a little bit better, but in terms of the design and structure and everything, they're both very similar at the end of the day. On the front of the Note 8, we can see a 6.3-inch 1440p panel, 521 pixels per inch, and even now in 2020, again, this phone came out in 2017, now in 2020, panels have still not really improved that much. And if you think about it, that's the really key thing to keep in mind. I feel like the panels themselves, in terms of when you're looking at them, what you're interacting with, those really haven't changed too much. It's just the things surrounding the panels. I think that's the best thing I've ever said, in my opinion, in terms of Android phones or iPhones in general. The panels are very close to one another. If you look at like a Galaxy S7 or even a Galaxy S6, those panels are still very, very good, but those panels, just the phones look archaic because of the amount of bezels. This one, however, even though yes, it's a little bit older, it doesn't really look that dated because the bezels on the top and bottom aren't that thick. So even though it does have a little bit of bezel compared to something like a Note 10 or a Galaxy S10 or whatever, it's really not that bad. So in terms of the design on the front, it's not bad. USB Type-C on this phone, as well as a headphone jack, which is really cool. A dual camera on the back and a glass back as well, which is really cool. As well as the S Pen. You guys already know the S Pen is one of the best things about this phone. You also have a microSD card slot on this phone as well, so you can go and expand that storage. They took that out on the Note 10, but they have it on the Note 10 Plus. If that's your thing, you have that capability. But in terms of the outside, I think this is one of the best aging phones right now in terms of the 2017 lineup. Of course, the iPhone 10 is up there too, but with the S8 and Note 8, Samsung really did a great job with the fundamentals of the outside of this phone, and it's really held up. There's really not too many complaints. The screen is great. You have IP certification. You can go up to 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes. We really haven't gotten an increase since then either for the IP certifications. We don't have IP69 or anything like that, if there's even that invented, I don't know. So really all the features and cool things that came with the Note 8 haven't really been changed or haven't really been improved on for the most part since 2017. So that's kind of an important thing to note. But in terms of the outside, that is really pretty much it. Now here's the most controversial thing that happened since last year, okay? Software wise, it started off with Android Nougat. You are able to get Android Pie on it with Samsung's One UI, and that is pretty much it. It's not getting any more software updates right now, which is pretty dumb. I don't know why Samsung did that. I know they're usually not known for supporting their phones for a super long time, but I found One UI to be really cool, but I also found two things. One UI 2.0 really wasn't a crazy huge rehaul of software. It wasn't like it was iOS 6 to iOS 7 or something like that, or Android KitKat to Lollipop. It was really more of the same. It was just a couple features added here and there, but Samsung still didn't want to do it. But the even weirder thing is that between the Note 8 and the Note 9, there really isn't a crazy difference between them. Of course that one does have a little bit more going for it, but it really isn't that crazy of a difference. Like Samsung could have easily supported the Note 8 to an extra version, as well as the S8 and S8 Plus. They were just being stingy with their software updates, and in order for them to be competitive with all these other phone manufacturers out there, they're going to have to do more than just hardware things. They're going to have to go and improve the longevity of their devices if they want to even compete with iPhones. I understand they're killing it in terms of the budget phones, and they're killing it in phone sales, but they could still do a little bit better. And if they just improve the software life cycle of these phones, they could do much better. You do have custom ROMs on this thing, so you can easily go root it, custom ROM it. I don't know which specific variants are capable of being ROMmed, but you do have that capability on this phone. Whether you want to do it or not, you have this, and that's really, really cool. There's still a lot of people who use this phone. That's a really, really important thing to note there. So in terms of the outside and software, that really pretty much covers covers it. Now hitting on the performance side of things, this thing did come with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 chipset, an octa-core CPU, and Adreno 540 GPU. Now there were 3 different models of this phone when it was released, a 64, 128, and 256 gigabyte variants. All those variants had 6 gigabytes of RAM. So remember, this thing has the microSD card slot, so you can easily go get that phone, get the base model, pay the cheapest amount for it for the 64 gig model, and just expand that storage to the microSD card, which is really cool. That's something we don't have on a lot of, obviously no iPhones have it, but even on Android phones they're slowly taking that capability out, but this phone has it, which is really cool. And in terms of the overall performance, I still think it's really good. Obviously, I just did a late 2019 review of this thing. I said the same thing. It's a really good performing phone. There's really not too many things to complain about. Really, the only times I see it being slow is when I do compare this phone to other devices. If I look at like my Note 9 or Note 10 or my S10 or my iPhone 11 Pro, if I look at those phones, it might be a little bit faster here and there, but when I just use it, as a side device or whenever I'm just picking it up and doing random things with it, it's not a bad performing device. It works perfectly fine. I have no complaints with it. It's really more of what you expect. Really, the only times, like I said, you might see some things here and there is when you load up a bunch of apps in the background. Right now, 6 gigabytes of RAM is pretty good. 4 gigabytes is like the lowest I would go, but 6 gigs on an Android device is not bad. And it does a pretty decent job of keeping those things in the background, so that's really cool. If you have a bunch of apps open, it does a decent job at managing it, but sometimes, apps do close, especially depending on if they're bigger apps or not. Gaming and everything like that is also very decent on this phone. Smaller apps, Temple Run Pew Pew, all those things are fine. Bigger games like Real Racing 3 run perfectly fine. I have no complaints about it as well. It's a very good device, really, in terms of performance. Whatever you're going to do with it, just don't expect to get it and, last you forever. It should last you for a very long time, but very soon we're going to be getting a huge RAM increase on devices. I feel like with the S20 coming out, the base models of all those apparently are going to be 12 gigabytes of RAM. I could be totally wrong, but that seems to be based off what the leaks and everything are saying. We might be getting 12 gigs, so that's going to be twice the amount of this thing. And if you can wait out a month or two for that phone to be released, you might be better off doing that. That way these prices to fluctuate and go down a little bit more. So take it however you want to, but in terms of the performance, in my opinion, I think it's a very good performing phone still for the price and the age of this phone. So that pretty much covers it up in terms of that. Now hitting on the camera, this thing has 2 12 megapixel sensors on the back. You can do 4K at up to 30 frames per second, which is really cool. On the front, you have an 8 megapixel wide angle lens, so you can do 1440p videos on that. No 4K on the front camera, but like I said, you have 4K on the back camera. Really, the only thing that hasn't held up for this camera might be 4K at 60 frames. The Pixel 4 XL didn't have that capability, but the quality of this video and the quality of the photos are very good and very sharp. I really have no complaints about this camera, and the best thing about this phone is that it has at least 2 camera sensors. Now, I've been talking a lot in this year about basically, the camera quality. I've been doing a lot of tests the last year, 2019, of camera tests and different camera phones and all those things, and the best thing and the main thing that I've seen is that quality, it fluctuates here and there. Some might be better depending on the lighting and everything like that, but one cannot dismiss the importance of camera hardware, and having more cameras is always better. And especially in 2020, we're going to be getting a ton of phones with like 3, 4, 5, 6 camera sensors, and the more sensors you have, the more future proof you are. So in this year of 2020, I would say at least 2 camera sensors you have to have, whether a wide angle lens and a telephoto or a wide angle lens and an ultra wide. We need at least both of those things, if not all 3. Obviously the 11 Pro, S10, Note 10s, they all have those. This one has the telephoto lens, which is a really cool complement to that camera. They both have optical image stabilization. So what I can tell you about this camera is it's a very good camera. It gets the job done. Audio quality is a little weird here and there, but you have that dual camera setup, which is really all I look for in a used phone when I'm recommending it to people. So that's really the main thing I want to hit on in the camera. It's still really good. Quality is great. You have a lot of those features built in. So in terms of the camera, I will say it's a thumbs up in my book for the year and price of this phone. Now ending it off with the battery life, this thing has a 3,300 mAh battery. You have wireless charging on this phone, which is really cool. What I can tell you about that battery life is it's good. It's definitely, gets the job done like I've stated. The only thing is that this phone's battery, and also a lot of other Samsung phones that I've owned, those batteries do degrade quite a bit, much noticeable more than like an iPhone or anything like that. What I can tell you is that it's not bad. I mean, it's definitely on the better side of things. I wish I could go and easily replace it. It's non-removable, but I don't even know what the process is to replace this battery internally. What I can tell you is that this might be the only downside of this phone. It's like very average. I wouldn't even consider it a con because it's really not that bad. But compared to something like my iPhone 11 Pro or even my Galaxy S10, those phones have around the same battery size as this thing, but those phones are much newer. This battery has degraded, so that's kind of a huge important thing to note. So in terms of battery, I'll give it like a, not a thumbs down or thumbs up. I'll just say it's very average for the time being. And to kind of sum up this video and answer the question, is the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 still worth it in 2020? I will say yes, I do think it's still worth it for the correct audience. Okay, this phone is still getting security updates for a little bit longer, so it's not that bad. But if you want a phone that's going to last you for many years going on forward, this is probably not that phone. This phone is probably going to be outdated within like a year from now once it's done getting security updates. I think a Note 9 might do you a little bit better. They're not even that much more expensive in the used market. So I can tell you is that this phone has so much going for it, but it's kind of only limited with the software. I would recommend you, if you get this phone, go ahead and throw a custom ROM on it. That will definitely do you much better. Hardware wise, it's still very great. You have a great camera. Just make sure the screen doesn't have too much burn-in if you're buying it used. USB Type-C, headphone jack, the S Pen, micro SD card slot. This is a loaded phone. You can do so much with it. You can probably pick one up for less than $200 on eBay or Craigslist or wherever you want to get it. That's probably the cheapest way you can get it. But I'll also find the cheapest one on Amazon, and I'll link it down in the description below so you guys can get it from there and help support the channel at the same time. But that is pretty much it. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. I think I already said the like thing. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate it if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.